August 13, 1970. Harlan Wartz, 35, and Fred, 16. Schmidt arrives at the Emerald Sky. They thought the dive in the Emerald Sinkhole will be a simple dive. The sinkhole is located on private land. It's surrounded by high fences and locked doors closed. But the owner of the land will often allow scientists or other professionals enter the survey. Curran was acquired on the same day. The only person authorized to enter. He's one of Orlando's most famous divers and authorized by the owner, responsible for training divers and instructors in the pre-K community. However, their purpose that day was not to train. They had trained the day before. But in the sinkhole, I accidentally lost an important piece of equipment. It doesn't hurt to just lose the item. But that's an expensive safety vest. 1970 South. Curran paid $142 for that vest. Converted for inflation, the current value is about $500 or so, equivalent to RMB about 10,000 yuan. So Harlan thinks, at least it's worth trying to get it back. Two divers. The age difference between the sailors is nearly 20 years, but both are experienced. At that time, only 4 people in the entire Orlando area have been certified. Divers who dive to a depth of 107 meters. And surprisingly, Fred, who is only 16 years old, is one of them. Harlan graduated from law school, originally in Atlanta, started a career as a private investigator, then moved to Florida. They opened a dive shop. He also founded the Professional Diving Association, devoted his entire life to diving business. Curran in sinkholes and caves, possessing extensive experience. He was in Florida 2 years ago, the English sinkhole near Brooksville, while exploring with 2 other divers. A front half lost his way in muddy water. Muddy water shading refers to the walls of the cave, and the fine sand on the ground is chewed up, forming dense dust clouds. It completely obscures the view. Harlan and another first half almost exhausted all the air in the spare cylinder. Still can't find the missing person. Not even the remains were found. Back to the day of the Jade Sinkhole. Harlan and Fred's dive was relatively smooth. They were looking for that safety vest. Dived to a depth of about 46 meters. But in the end, I couldn't find it. Prepared to return to the surface, Curran gestures for Fred to rise. The 2 began to ascend. But on the way, their respective guide ropes got entangled with them. Fortunately, they are all veteran divers, able to respond calmly. And they had plenty of air. There is also enough time to untie the ropes on your own. Harlan was the first to start ascending, and periodically check down on Fred. However, when approaching the water's surface, Harlan looked down, but saw Fred's flashlight fall into the depths of darkness. He immediately turned around and chased after him. But the further you go, the more I realized that I couldn't catch up with Fred at all. At a depth of about 91 meters, Fred's light completely disappeared into the abyss. Curran called the police as soon as she surfaced. The rescue operation began almost immediately, but the chances of finding Fred are very slim. The specific depth of the Jade Sinkhole, it has never been accurately measured. And Fred? Wearing a submersible bottle and a weight belt. Therefore, it is almost impossible for the remains to surface. What's more, the shape of the jadeite sinkhole is wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, close to the bottom and alive again, if the body floats upward. Also, likely unable to pass through the narrow hourglass-shaped section. Despite this, search and rescue teams are still trying. Rescue divers Wilson and Bode. Sims is deeper than Harlan and Fred. Dive to 114 meters. But still nothing. Such deep dive. Just a few minutes of searching. It also takes hours to decompress. Greatly increases the difficulty. Even so, increase the number of diving teams to 6 people, searching for sinkholes around the clock for almost 3 days. 3 days later, on August 16th, Harlan and including the dive team, including Bode, is back in the water, trying to find Fred. This time they only went down about 91 meters. But no trace has been found. When they start to ascend, ushered in the process of decompression and stay. Although this part seems less risky than diving, but it is essential for life. When staying at 76 meters for decompression, Karen's gaze was caught by a bubble that suddenly popped up on one side, and muddy water attraction. Fred was in crisis a few days ago due to rope's end. Now Bode is in the same situation. But Bode's condition is more serious. He was terrified, struggling desperately in the water, want to break free. Instead, it gets tighter and tighter, approaching a diver in a state of panic. Extremely dangerous. But Harlan still pulled out his knife. Ixian Bird. He first cut the rope above Bird, then dive under Bird. Cut the rope around the footprint. Bode is completely out of trouble, but still in a state of panic and shocked. Karen takes 2 deep breaths. Help him inflate his heart to safety. Enable him to ascend. Then the 2 of them helped up together. But without getting Kimmy out, he gets tangled in the rope again. Harlan cuts the rope again. But looking back, it was found that the respirator in Bode's mouth had come off. Harlan quickly pulled out a spare respirator. Want to hand it to him. But panic. It's impossible to understand Harlan's actions at all. Also refused to accept. As a final attempt, Harlan activates Bode's welfare control device. Filling the air pushes him to the surface. They operate in deep water, and it takes a long time to decompress. Sudden ascent is very dangerous. But in comparison, decompression sickness is better than drowning. When approaching the water, muddy waters reappear. The water suddenly became dark and cloudy. Harlan can't see above at all. And then he sensed something. Pull yourself from above. Even pulled his respirator out of his mouth. He was also caught in the rope. Even in this crisis, Harlan remains calm. He managed to get out of it like he did with Bird. Finally surfaced. After surfacing, he thought Bird had been treated at the dock, but he wasn't there. Think more about it. Harlan was swept away in severe pain from decompression sickness. He had started to feel unwell on his way up. And when he fully surfaced, the pain is unbearable. A minute ago he was 91 meters deep. It comes to the surface in a minute. He immediately called for others to call emergency services and prepare the hyperbaric chamber for treatment. After shouting, he dives again to relieve severe joint and muscle pain. Under Harlan, past life, Rising Bill discovers that he is still conscious, awake but extremely flustered Bird. Bill tried to stop him from diving, but Bode's struggle, causing Bill's mask to be knocked off. Delayed rescue. Bode not rescued. Bill first put the mask back on Andrain. When he opened his eyes again, Bode is gone. This is what can no longer be done. When the ambulance arrived, Karen emerges from the water. he was rushed to 96 kilometers away, Cape Canaveral, and enter the hyperbaric chamber for treatment before midnight. The cabin pressure is simulated as an underwater environment of 49 meters. Slowly decompress all night. Finally, at 6 a.m., Harlan fully decompressed. Returned to daily life after a brief recovery. In just a few days, Harlan experienced two tragic freeze accidents. Bo died that day in the Emerald sinkhole, and Fred and Bird's remains. It has not been found yet. The respective causes of death could not be determined, but it can be speculated. Both of them are to some extent experienced crime. This could cause phrase coma, panic. In the end, both drowned. A few days later, the police have been dispatched to sinking several times. It is also for the curious to come and explore. What's up? The accident that killed Fred and Bird. The Jade sinkhole was permanently closed. No one is allowed to enter again. Harlan is now approaching 90. Received as a living legend in the world of money. That's the end of today's video. May you all stay safe. See you next time.